Hey guys, tonight we begin with the most horrible group of medieval assassins, a secretive and highly skilled group of Nizari Ismailis who operated in the Middle East during the Middle Ages, primarily in Persia and Syria. They were known for their targeted assassinations of political and religious leaders, earning them the moniker assassins from their enemies. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I am doing here, and let me know in the comments where are you watching from and what time is for you now. It's always incredible to see who's joining us from across the world. So now dim the lights and close your fan so that you enjoy this episode fully. Ready? Let's begin. Though nameless, these hidden hands shaped the fate of nations. The death of a single man could ripple outward, treaties broken, wars ignited, successions thrown into chaos. Monarchs hired tasters, doubled their guards, built secret passages, and trap-laden chambers, not out of military threat, but fear of a single unseen killer. Even the church, with all its dogma, could not wholly condemn the act when it served divine aims. Secret orders, like the Knights Templar or Teutonic Knights, were sometimes suspected, not always rightly, of harboring agents skilled in subterfuge. And within the papal courts themselves, power struggles occasionally ended not with excommunication, but with a quiet death at supper. The assassin's art required patience above all. Some were planted years in advance, young orphans raised in a noble household, servants waiting for just one night when a guest drank alone. Others came from afar, hired across borders for their foreignness, their lack of ties. These were men and women who could vanish like breath on glass. But it was not always warlords and nobles who fell. In turbulent towns, guild leaders were killed to sway economic control. In rural parishes, land disputes ended in silent barns with blades drawn. Even scholars and clerks, if found inconvenient, could meet an untimely end. The line between assassin and vigilante blurred. Some killed for justice, perceived or otherwise, righting personal wrongs in blood. Others acted as political instruments, enforcers of secret policy. The motivations could be tangled: love, money, revenge, zealotry, yet always the method remained the same: unseen, unexpected, final. And so the medieval assassin was less a figure of legend and more a function of a world without surveillance, where power was personal and security porous. Theirs was a time of locked doors and whispered warnings, of eyes scanning rooftops and goblets left untouched. Even as the Renaissance dawned, casting light upon science and humanism, the assassin did not disappear. He simply adapted, trading dagger for pistol, cloak for diplomacy, but his soul, that of the silent executor born in the shadowed alleys of the medieval world, remained unchanged. He was the quiet heartbeat of fear that thrummed beneath every throne. The assassin of the medieval world was not merely a murderer in secret. He was an opportunist shaped by architecture, custom, and fear. In a time before standing armies could be reliably called upon, when loyalty was fickle and borders were porous, assassination filled the gap between politics and war. In the Islamic world, the legacy of the Hashashin rippled long after their strongholds fell to the Mongols in the 13th century. Their myth grew more potent than their history. Tales of initiates drugged with hashish and shown visions of paradise, only to awaken in Alamut and be told that obedience led back to heaven. While apocryphal, these stories fascinated even Marco Polo, who relayed them with awe. The Hashashin were eventually eradicated, but their psychological tactics, intimate, performative violence as messaging, endured in other clandestine groups. In Christian Europe, assassination lacked the formal ritualism of the East, but it thrived in courts and corridors. Its practitioners were rarely named, their existence inferred only through absence. A noble dead without wounds, poison. A fall from battlements, suspicious. A hunting accident, convenient. Chronicles noted these events with asterisks in tone, never proof, always insinuation. Poison became the hallmark of subtle assassination by the 13th century, particularly in Italy and France. It required apothecaries, or more often, women, herbalists, and midwives who dealt in tinctures under the veil of healing. Some worked willingly, others under coercion. Belladonna for heart stoppage. Arsenic, trioxide for internal hemorrhage, odorless, tasteless. It was known as inheritance powder, for a reason, and always the challenge. Dosing just enough to simulate a natural illness, ensuring time for the killer to vanish before suspicion turned. The church, too, whispered of poison. Suspicion clung to multiple papal deaths. Pope John XXV died in 1277, when the ceiling of his study collapsed, but some believed it was sabotage. Pope Benedict the Weiss died mysteriously in 1304 after dining in Perugia. His successor? Clement V, handpicked by King Philip IV of France. Motive, opportunity, always present. But in a world where disease and sudden death were common, proof was slippery. In the Baltic and Slavic regions, assassins sometimes operated under the auspices of princely families. In the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, where Christianity, paganism, and local clan loyalties intermingled, nobles eliminated rivals in woodlands or icy rivers. A slip on the ice could mean a dagger in the ribs. In Rus's territories, betrayal by boyars was common, and princes often met their end in chambers, not battlefields. Assassination, as artistry found fertile ground in Renaissance Italy, a crucible of complexity. There, it became institutionalized. Political treatises, notably Machiavelli's Discourses and The Prince, did not condemn assassination, but analyzed it. The Pazzi conspiracy was merely the most infamous. Assassinations were part of governance. Letters survive detailing contracts for killings with terms like silent as snow and between vespers and matins. Some even included payment structures, half up front, half after the body. Women played unexpected roles in this world. While rarely frontline killers, they could act as informants, lures, or poisoners. In the courts of Burgundy and Naples, some noblemen used jewelry powdered with toxins to deliver fatal touches. A poisoned ring, a laced kerchief. The idea of the femme fatale was not just literary. It was lived, feared. Weapons were chosen not only for efficiency, but for context. A long dagger might suit a cloister, but a garrote was preferable in a narrow hall. Crossbows, though cumbersome, were used in more than one confirmed case, from cathedral bell towers or city walls. And some assassins used fire, lighting homes or stables with the victim inside. The accident explained away. Escape was rare and often unnecessary. In cultures influenced by religious martyrdom like the Hashashin, or certain crusader factions, assassins sought death. They were not just blades for hire, but believers. Others, especially in France or Bohemia, were coerced through debt or blackmail. Their silence was ensured not by gold, but by the fear that if they fled, their families would be punished. Whispers of assassin guilds abound in apocryphal records, groups that trained killers in foreign tongues, poisons, climbing techniques. No true medieval brotherhood of assassins was proven to exist in Europe, but the myth persisted, and in some sense the need for them ensured their presence, if not in fact, then in fear. By the 15th century, as gunpowder and bureaucracy began, To reshape power, the age of the silent killer adapted. Assassins became spies, informants, saboteurs. They changed shape, but not spirit. They never truly left. In the alleys behind the abbeys, in the hush of stone cloisters, and at the flickering edge of candlelight, the medieval assassin honed not just his blade, but his mind. His craft required more than the act of killing. It demanded anticipation, observation, patience stretched over weeks, months, sometimes years. The assassin's toolkit. Beyond the iconic dagger or poisoned chalice, the assassin's arsenal was shaped by context. Stilettos and misericordes, slender, triangular-bladed. Daggers used for finishing wounded knights, ideal for slipping between ribs or up through the jaw into the brain, narrow enough to pierce chainmail rings or find gaps in armor. Silent, clean. Garrots. A length of cord, often silken or horsehair wrapped for strength, used from behind. One twist around the throat in a silent chapel corridor. Often fatal in seconds if the carotid was compressed. Spiked rings. Hollow rings with small reservoirs, sometimes tipped with venom or irritants. One handshake, one brush against a neck. Lethality varied, but fear did the rest. Disguised blades, walking sticks, belt buckles, even devotional crosses, sometimes concealed small knives or darts. The illusion of piety was especially effective in ecclesiastical targets. Poison varieties, cantarella, rumoured, associated with the Borgias, possibly a blend of arsenic and other toxins. White arsenic, odourless, tasteless, and slow-acting. Aqua tofana, a later Renaissance poison, but with roots in the apothecaries. Of Naples and Sicily, allegedly invented by women. Monkshood, aconite, used sparingly, powerful but bitter in taste, requiring skillful masking. Strychnine and hemlock, more dramatic, rarely used unless intended to terrify or make an example. Psychological. Warfare assassins understood fear. Sometimes the threat of assassination served better than the act. In some cases, letters of warning, anonymous notes or cryptic tokens, a black feather, a skull sigil, were left for nobles. This created panic, routines altered, guards doubled, trust eroded. The assassin didn't even have to act. The idea of him was enough. The Hashashin reportedly sent blades embedded in wooden tablets as warnings. In Europe, sometimes a priest's sermon might include hints at a noble's sins, clearly leaked by someone with access. Known or suspected cases. Edward II of England, 1327. Officially murdered in captivity, possibly by suffocation. But legend claims he was executed with a red-hot poker inserted rectally, a method chosen to leave no outward mark. If true, it was both assassination and symbol. Andrew, Duke of Calabria, 1345. Husband to Queen Joanna I of Naples, murdered while on a hunting trip. Accounts suggest his death was arranged by courtiers who opposed his potential co-rule. Strangled with a cord, his body dumped unceremoniously. Philip of Swabia, 1208. A German king stabbed to death by Otto of Wittelsbach at a wedding banquet. The killer had been denied marriage to Philip's daughter, a personal vendetta mingled with imperial politics. John, Duke of Burgundy, 1419, assassinated on a bridge during peace talks with the Dauphin of France. The supposed meeting was a trap, orchestrated under the guise of diplomacy. It triggered a political avalanche, helping spark the final phase of the 100 Years' War. Urban design and assassination cities themselves shaped the assassin's work. In Venice, with its twisting alleys and canals, escape was possible by boat. Some reports tell of black gondolas used by hired killers, slipping victims into the water under cover of fog. In Florence, many palazzi had cortili, inner courtyards where guests might be ambushed. Trapdoors, false panels, and secret passages were not the stuff of fantasy. They were real features in the homes of powerful families. Churches, too, were popular venues. They were accessible, crowded, and symbolic. A killing during Mass echoed louder than one in a back room. The assassination of Giuliano de' Medici inside the Florence Duomo during Easter Mass, Pazzi conspiracy, was not just murder. It was a message writ in blood. Training and recruitment, contrary to modern fiction, there were few organized schools for assassins. But informal training did exist. Thieves' guilds and mercenary companies sometimes cultivated individuals for wet work. Assassins were often selected young, agile, orphaned, and disposable. Religious fanatics, particularly during crusades or inquisitions, could be manipulated into becoming martyrs through murder. These were not professionals, but zealots, weaponized by rhetoric. Disgraced knights, mercenaries in debt, or soldiers turned rogue could be lured by gold and a promise of redemption, or escape. In rare cases, noble households trained their own killers. These retainers acted more as covert enforcers, combining espionage with execution. They were better paid, better protected, but, if caught, erased from family records entirely. The assassin's fate, few assassins survived long. If captured, torture was certain. Execution was often public, boiling, breaking on the wheel, or burning. But if successful and discreet, some were rewarded. One assassin of the Archbishop of St. Andrews, David Beaton, 1546, though post-medieval, was reportedly smuggled out of Scotland and given land in France. His name is lost, but the act was remembered. Occasionally, the killer disappeared, vanished without trace. Some say to monastic life, others to foreign wars. Still others, never heard from again. History remembers the victim. The assassin becomes legend. The medieval assassin operated in a world ruled by walls, stone walls, of castles, city gates, monastery cloisters, and winding streets where sunlight barely penetrated. These walls were at once protection and prison, creating a complex geography for the killer's trade. Castles, often perceived as impregnable fortresses, had hidden vulnerabilities exploited by assassins. Narrow spiral staircases forced movement, one way, making escape routes predictable. Secret passages, often known only to a few trusted servants, could allow entry to private chambers. An assassin who could bribe or coerce a servant had access akin to royalty. At times, assassins used scaling hooks and rope ladders to reach upper windows, sneaking past guards patrols at night. The chill of stone corridors and the smell of damp earth would be constant companions. The only sounds, distant torches flickering, the whisper of silk sleeves, a step muffled against cold flagstones. The mind of the assassin, unlike the sword-wielding knights who sought glory in open battle, the assassin worked in isolation and secrecy. Patience was a weapon as sharp as any blade. Assassination was not a strike of opportunity, it was a slow game of chess. Observation. Many assassins spent months studying their targets, habits, schedules, even preferred dishes at meals. A noble who always drank from a particular goblet, or a lord who favored a certain garden bench. Timing. Some assassinations occurred during the chaos of battle or public ceremonies, where a knife thrust could be hidden in the crush of bodies. Others happened in the quiet hours of the night, when guards were tired and vigilance slipped. Silence. Movement was measured, breath controlled. The assassin's skill was to be there, deliver death, and disappear as though he had never been. Political context and moral ambiguity. In medieval politics, assassination was often viewed as
a necessary evil, a means to an end.
kings and princes knew that a rival's death could save a kingdom from war or hasten a truce. The murder of Henry I of England's sons. While not conclusively assassination, the mysterious deaths of William Adelin, the heir, drowned in the White Ship disaster of 1120, and others fueled rumours of foul play, a shadow war beneath the waves. The death of Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, the last native Prince of Wales, 1282, is suspected by some historians to have involved betrayal and assassination-like tactics, ambushed after being lured into a meeting. Case study: the poisoned chalice. In 14th century France, poison was the favoured tool of those who lacked armies or influence. Court records from the reign of King Charles VI mention several trials involving alleged poisonings. The famous case of the Affair of the Poisons did not occur until later, the 17th century, but medieval courts were well acquainted with accusations of slow deaths caused by tainted wine or food. In some cases, cooks or servants were implicated, often under torture, confessing to administering poison for their masters or for bribes. Apothecaries, with their secret recipes and knowledge of herbs, held a dangerous power. Some were licensed, others operated in the shadows, supplying poison on demand. The role of women in assassination. Though much medieval warfare and intrigue are recorded as male domains, women's roles in assassination were often pivotal, if secret. Poisoners. Women, especially widows and midwives, had access to herbs and potions. They could mask poisons as remedies or beauty treatments. Informants and lures, courtesans and ladies-in-waiting sometimes provided intelligence or distracted guards, enabling assassins to strike. Famous alleged female poisoners. While many tales are apocryphal, figures like Tulia d'Aragona and Isabella of Castile have legends of involvement in poisoning plots, reflecting broader fears of women's subtle power. The assassin's fate. A life and death in the shadows. Many assassins lived brief, precarious lives. Those who survived often vanished into anonymity, selling their skills to the highest bidder and then disappearing, sometimes into monastic retirement, sometimes into foreign courts. Captured assassins faced horrific punishments designed to serve as warnings. Torture instruments like the rack, the Iron Maiden, or boiling were not uncommon. The web of conspiracy. Assassination as social and political network. Assassination in the Middle Ages was rarely the act of a lone wolf. More often, it was the result of elaborate conspiracies involving multiple players, nobles, clergy, spies, and sometimes entire factions. Patrons and sponsors. A wealthy noble or church leader rarely committed murder with their own hands. Instead, they hired or coerced assassins, mercenaries, disgraced knights, or criminals. These patrons shielded themselves with layers of deniability, using intermediaries and coded correspondence, informants and spies. Every successful assassination required intelligence, informants inside castles, townsfolk with grudges, or corrupt. Servants provided key details, schedules, security arrangements, hidden entrances, bribery and blackmail. Money and secrets flowed through the shadows. Guards could be bought, cooks bribed, even members of a target's household turned traitor. Sometimes a well-placed threat or promise of favor was enough to ensure silence or cooperation. Religious figures. In some cases, priests or monks acted as go-betweens or even as assassins themselves, cloaking deadly intent beneath vows of faith. Psychological conditioning. The assassin's mindset and training. The medieval assassin's mind was forged in isolation and secrecy. They needed not only physical skill, but an ability to live with extreme moral ambiguity, fatalism, and faith. Among the Hashashin, recruits were indoctrinated with the belief that death in service guaranteed paradise. This fatalism made them fearless and willing to sacrifice everything. Mental conditioning, quiet observation, patience, and self-control were drilled rigorously. Assassins were taught to suppress fear, pain, and hesitation. The calm before the strike was as important as the strike itself. Secrecy and paranoia. Trust was a luxury few assassins enjoyed. They lived with constant suspicion, even of allies, knowing betrayal was common. The art of disguise and deception stealth required more than a hidden blade. It demanded the mastery of appearances. Costume and role. Assassins assumed many guises: beggars, monks, merchants, travelers, even nobles. Each disguise was tailored to the environment. A pilgrim's scallop shell might grant access to a cathedral. A merchant's wagon allowed passage through city gates without scrutiny. Mimicry and language. Knowing local customs, dialects, and gestures was essential. An assassin who spoke awkwardly risked exposure. Some learned multiple languages or regional accents. Props and tools of deception, hidden compartments in clothing, false beards, and masks were used. Sometimes religious relics or forged documents smoothed passage through checkpoints. Lesser-known historical assassination cases: Roger de Flor, 1305. Leader of the Catalan Company, a mercenary force in Byzantine service, was assassinated in Adrianople, reportedly by orders of the Byzantine emperor. His murder triggered violent reprisals and decades of instability. John Comyn, 1306. In a dramatic act of betrayal, Robert the Bruce stabbed John Comyn in a church in Dumfries, Scotland, eliminating a rival claimant to the Scottish throne. The killing was both political and personal, and it marked the start of Bruce's campaign for independence. Alfonso of Aragon, 1416. Assassinated by poison while imprisoned during political intrigue in Naples. His death shifted the balance of power and demonstrated the deadly stakes of court politics. The poisoner's secret, preparation and delivery, apothecaries held a dangerous knowledge. Their shops were filled with powders, tinctures, and plants, many deadly. Preparation. Poisons required precision. Overdose could alert victims too soon, underdose might fail. Some poisons left no trace, others induced symptoms mimicking illness. Delivery. Food and drink were common vectors, but poison could also be applied to arrows, clothing, or even coins. A kiss from a poisoned glove, a handshake from a ring tipped with venom. Detection and countermeasures. Some nobles employed tasters or kept personal apothecaries trusted to screen food and drink. Others used protective charms or avoided certain foods thought to be commonly poisoned. Religion and assassination, justification and condemnation. Religious views on assassination were complex. Church's official stance: murder was a sin, but political. Assassinations were sometimes tacitly tolerated if they served God's justice or the preservation of the realm. Just war theory and tyrannicide. Some theologians argued that killing a tyrant or heretic was justified. This provided moral cover for assassins acting under orders. Excommunication and penance. Assassins risked spiritual damnation, often leading secret confessions or seeking absolution in their final hours. Assassin guilds and mercenary networks. The hidden infrastructure of death. While the near-mythical Hashashin operated as a semi-religious order, Europe's medieval assassins rarely formed formal guilds in the same way craftsmen or merchants did. Instead, a loose but effective network of mercenaries, spies, and killers for hire flourished in the shadows, often overlapping with thieves' guilds, spy rings, and political factions. Mercenary assassins. Many assassins were professional soldiers, or criminals who took contracts for assassination as part of a wider mercenary career. They might fight openly in wars and secretly carry out killings between battles, guilds of thieves and cutthroats. In many cities, thieves' guilds controlled the underground economy. These organizations often employed or protected assassins, providing cover, safe houses, and networks of informants. Political and religious networks, clerics, monks, and secret sects sometimes acted as assassins or facilitators, using religious cover to move unseen. The Church's complicated stance on violence meant that some ecclesiastics engaged covertly in assassination plots, especially during times of heresy suppression or papal politics. Code of silence. These networks operated on brutal codes of secrecy. Betrayal meant death, not just for the assassin, but for families and entire clans. Profile. The last mission of William the White, a notorious English assassin. William the White is one of the few named medieval assassins recorded in fragmentary chronicles from 14th century England. His moniker came from the pale linen hood he wore, symbolizing his role as a ghostly executioner. Background. Believed to be a disinherited younger son of a minor noble family, William turned to assassination to claim wealth and revenge. Fluent in several dialects and skilled in disguise, he worked mostly for nobles embroiled in the Wars of the Roses. The mission. In 1462, William was hired to eliminate a key Yorkist supporter in London, a man whose influence was tipping local allegiances. The target was heavily guarded in his townhouse, surrounded by loyal retainers. Preparation. William spent weeks surveilling, gaining the trust of servants and pretending to be a foreign merchant. He smuggled in a specially forged key and small, deadly vials of aconite poison. The strike. On a rainy night, William slipped inside through a servant's entrance, avoided patrols using shadows and silence, and found the target asleep. He applied poison to the man's wine and then stabbed him swiftly with a hidden dagger. Escape and capture. His escape was nearly flawless until a betrayed servant alerted guards. William was captured but refused to name his employer. He was executed publicly, his hood torn away to reveal a face pale with conviction. Legacy. William's daring mission and stoic silence turned him into a whispered legend, an archetype of the cold, efficient medieval assassin. The medieval assassin's toolkit, instruments of invisible death. An assassin's tools were an extension of their body and mind, carefully chosen for concealment, lethality, and subtlety. Daggers and knives, small, easily concealed daggers were preferred over large swords, often curved or with a thin blade for quick, deep thrusts. The katar, or punching dagger in some regions, could be hidden under sleeves. Poison vials and applicators, small glass or ceramic vials containing poisons such as aconite, wolfsbane, rapidly fatal with painful convulsions. Belladonna, deadly nightshade, causes respiratory failure. Arsenic, tasteless but accumulative. Applicators included small brushes for coating blades or lips of goblets. Rope and hooks. Lightweight rope with grappling hooks allowed scaling walls or quick escapes. Knots could be tied to silence door hinges or create traps. Disguise accessories, masks made of leather or cloth, false beards or wigs. Religious symbols, crosses, rosaries, used as both disguise and access tokens, smoke and light manipulation, small flasks of pitch or oil to create smoke screens, mirrors or polished metal to signal allies or misdirect guards. Unpacking specific historical assassination plots won the murder of Thomas Becket, 1170. Perhaps one of the most famous assassinations of the medieval period, Becket's death was a lightning bolt that shocked Christendom. Background: Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, clashed repeatedly with King Henry II over the rights and privileges of the Church. Their conflict was public and bitter, inflaming tensions between royal authority and ecclesiastical power. The king's outburst, legend holds that Henry, frustrated, exclaimed, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" 4 knights, Reginald, Fitzurse, Hugh de Morville, William de Tracy, and Richard le Breton, took this as a royal command. The murder. On December 29, 1170, the knights stormed Canterbury Cathedral. Despite the sacred setting, they brutally killed Becket at the altar, stabbing him multiple times. Aftermath. The murder horrified Europe. Becket was canonized within 3 years, becoming a martyr and symbol of church resistance to secular power. The act also showed how assassination could be impulsive, yet politically explosive. The Patsy Conspiracy, 1478, a dramatic example of political assassination intertwined with family rivalry and papal ambition. Background: the Medici family dominated Florence, provoking jealousy and fear among rival families. The Pazzi, supported by Pope Sixtus IV and other enemies of the Medici, plotted to eliminate Lorenzo and Giuliano de' Medici. The plot. During Easter Mass in Florence's cathedral, conspirators attacked. Giuliano was stabbed 19 times and died. Lorenzo was wounded but escaped. Consequences. The conspiracy failed to topple the Medici but sparked brutal reprisals. The event highlighted how assassination could be both theatrical and politically charged, striking in the heart of public worship. The assassination of Roger de Flor, 1305. Context: Roger de Flor, a former Templar and leader of the Catalan Company. Mercenaries gained enormous power in Byzantine territories. His presence was resented by Byzantine elites. Assassination. He was invited to a banquet in Adrianople, only to be murdered by Byzantine agents, stabbed by members of the emperor's court. Aftermath. His death unleashed chaos as the Catalan Company ravaged Byzantine lands in revenge, demonstrating how assassinations could destabilize entire regions. Religion and mysticism, the assassin's inner world and outer legend, faith as motivation and justification. The medieval assassin was often caught in a web of religious belief, whether Christian, Muslim, or pagan. For the Hashashin, faith was central. Death in service was a sacred duty, promising spiritual reward. Christian assassins operated under complex moral codes. Killing could be a sin, but tyrannicide or protecting the faith might be justified. Some assassins sought absolution, confessing before their missions or death, indicating a deep religious consciousness. Mysticism and legend. Shadowy nature of assassination lent itself to superstition. Assassins were sometimes thought to possess supernatural abilities, invisibility, poison immunity, or curses. Their killings were viewed as acts of divine or demonic intervention. Folklore and ballads transformed assassins into tragic heroes, spectral avengers, or cursed villains. The role of secret societies and esoteric orders like the Hashashin, inspired legends of secret assassin brotherhoods controlling kingdoms. In Europe, rumors swirled of shadowy sects, sometimes conflated with heretics or witches. The mystique of the assassin fed political paranoia and religious fear, contributing to witch hunts and inquisitions. The dark art of poison, venoms, toxins, and elixirs of death poison was one of the deadliest and most insidious weapons in a medieval assassin's arsenal. It required knowledge, patience, and subtlety, often wielded by skilled apothecaries or the assassins themselves. Common poisons and their effects: aconite, wolfsbane. A highly toxic plant, aconite's alkaloids caused paralysis of the heart and respiratory system. Symptoms began with burning sensations and numbness, quickly followed by dizziness, fainting, and death. Famous for its rapid action, it was often used to coat blades or tip arrows. Belladonna, deadly nightshade, contained atropine and scopolamine, causing blurred vision, hallucinations, and respiratory failure. Sometimes used to induce a death-like state, confusing victims and doctors alike. Hemlock, known from the death of Socrates, it caused gradual paralysis and suffocation, could be disguised in drinks or meals, making it a slow but certain killer. Arsenic, the classic poison of choice for centuries, tasteless and odorless in small doses, caused gastrointestinal pain, vomiting, and organ failure. Its cumulative effects sometimes mimicked natural illness. Nightshade and datura caused delirium, hallucinations, and often fatal respiratory distress. Sometimes used to incapacitate rather than kill immediately. Methods of delivery: ingested, most common slipped into wine, food, or medicine. Trusted servants or apothecaries were often bribed or coerced to help. Applied: poison could be rubbed on dagger tips or arrowheads for a quick kill. Contact: rare but possible. Some poisons absorbed through the skin or mucous membranes like lips or eyes. Inhaled: poisonous powders could be dusted into a room or on clothing, though this was less common. Detection and countermeasures: nobles often had tasters who sampled their food and drink to detect poison. Some employed apothecaries, skilled in antidotes or protective herbs. Superstitions led to charms or rituals aimed at warding off poisoning. However, medical knowledge was limited, and many poisonings were misdiagnosed as illness. The daily life and training of a medieval assassin. Early training, from youth to shadow. Unlike knights or soldiers trained openly in castles or barracks, many assassins began their education in secrecy, often recruited young, sometimes from orphanages, poor families, or minor noble houses fallen on hard times. Mentorship and apprenticeship. A seasoned assassin or a master spy would take on apprentices, teaching them not just combat skills but subtle arts like observation, disguise, and poisons. Learning stealth and movement. Training included walking silently, blending into crowds, climbing walls, and navigating urban or forested terrain without detection or weapon. Familiarity. Assassins mastered daggers, short swords, crossbows, and throwing knives. Training focused on quick, precise strikes, targeting vital points: throat, heart, or arteries. Poisoncraft. Apprentices learned to identify, prepare, and apply poisons, sometimes spending months studying herbs under apothecaries or monks with botanical knowledge. Physical conditioning and skills. Assassins needed agility, endurance, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Exercise regimens. Running, climbing, swimming, and calisthenics were vital to build silent movement and endurance. Breath control and meditation. Some were taught techniques to control breathing, steady their hands, and maintain focus, skills useful both in stalking prey and in facing death. Weapons, drills. Repetitive practice ensured muscle memory for deadly strikes. often practiced against wooden dummies or in sparring with masters. Psychological preparation. Assassins lived in constant danger and moral ambiguity. Mental toughness. They were trained to suppress fear and hesitation. Many followed codes or religious beliefs that framed death as honorable or redemptive. Detachment. Emotional distance from victims was necessary. Assassins often dehumanized their targets to carry out their tasks without remorse. Patience and timing. They learned to wait for the perfect moment, sometimes shadowing targets for weeks or months. Secrecy and trust, living a double life, demanded ruthless discretion. Trust was limited to a few fellow assassins or handlers. Daily routine and lifestyle. The assassin's day was one of shadows and preparation rather than action. Disguises and cover identities. They often assumed roles such as merchants, monks, servants, or entertainers to move unseen. Changing disguises was part of daily life. Gathering intelligence. Assassins spent time in taverns, markets, and courts, eavesdropping and gathering information about their targets' habits, schedules, and weaknesses. Maintaining equipment. Knives were sharpened, poisons replenished, and secret escape routes scouted. Avoiding suspicion. They kept low profiles, avoided attachments, and moved frequently to evade detection. Social isolation and risk. No permanent home. Most assassins were wanderers, seldom trusted by anyone beyond their employers. Living on the edge. The price of failure was death or torture. Capture meant brutal interrogation and execution. Moral ambiguity. Some assassins struggled with the consequences of their actions, while others embraced the role as a means of survival or vengeance. The daily life and training of a medieval assassin. Extended recruitment and early indoctrination. Many assassins were recruited as children or teenagers. Some were orphans sold or given to secretive groups. Others were children of disgraced nobles or impoverished families. Indoctrination often included oaths of silence, loyalty, and obedience, sometimes bound by religious or mystical vows. The Hashashin, for example, required absolute dedication to their cause, promising death without regret. Early training involved breaking down previous identities and instilling a sense of purpose, whether political, religious, or mercenary. Mastering. Disguise and deception. Disguise was more than just clothing. It was a full transformation. Assassins studied the mannerisms, speech patterns, and social customs of their assumed roles. A trained assassin could convincingly pass as a beggar, a priest, a traveling minstrel, or a noble courier, depending on the target's environment. Mastery of disguise often included knowledge of regional dialects, religious rituals, and even musical instruments to blend seamlessly. Advanced physical training beyond basic stealth and agility. Some assassin groups trained in acrobatics, silent killing techniques, and escape artistry. Training could include climbing castle walls at night using ropes or grappling hooks, moving silently across rooftops, or swimming across rivers to infiltrate enemy territory. Some were taught to sabotage siege equipment, set fires, or poison wells to weaken enemies before the kill. Poisons and medicines, the double-edged science. Many assassins were apprenticed to apothecaries or herbalists who guarded their knowledge closely. The line between healing and killing was thin. The same herbs used for cures could be deadly in different doses. Learning to prepare poisons required patience. Some poisons had to steep for days or weeks before reaching potency. Assassins often carried antidotes or used counterpoisons themselves to survive accidental exposure. Psychological conditioning and ritual. Some groups practiced meditative or mystical rituals to steal their minds. The Hashashin, according to some accounts, used controlled substances to induce altered states, increasing their fearlessness. Psychological training included visualization of the kill, emotional detachment, and acceptance of death as a natural part of the mission. Group solidarity was maintained through secret signs, passwords, and ceremonies that reinforced loyalty and suppressed fear. Gathering intelligence and planning the kill, the success of an assassination depended on meticulous reconnaissance. Assassins would often shadow targets for weeks or months. They documented daily routines, habits, favored routes, schedules of guards, and potential escape routes. Assassins sometimes infiltrated households or courts, gaining trust as servants or advisors to obtain intimate knowledge. Planning involved choosing the perfect time and place, often symbolic, such as during religious ceremonies or public festivals, to maximize impact. Execution, the art of the silent kill, the actual kill.
Had to be swift and silent.
Targets were usually struck with precise dagger thrusts to vital points, throat, temple, or heart, minimizing noise and struggle. When poison was used, it could be slipped into wine, food, or even applied to weapons for a lethal touch. Some assassinations were public spectacles meant to terrorize, while others were clandestine and untraceable. Escape was difficult. Many assassins accepted that capture meant death. Thus, many carried concealed weapons for last defense or suicide, aftermath, and survival. The aftermath of an assassination could be chaotic. Assassins often relied on safe houses, secret contacts, or underground networks to disappear quickly. Payment for their work was sometimes substantial but also precarious. Betrayal was common, and assassination contracts were often double-edged. Some assassins became legends, while most faded into obscurity, their deeds remembered only in rumor or anonymous chronicles. The secret world of medieval assassins, a long and detailed exploration in the shadowed alleys and vaulted halls of medieval Europe and the Near East. The figure of the assassin moved unseen and unknown, yet their influence rippled through history's tides with deadly precision. To understand these shadow operatives fully, we must trace not just their deeds, but the world that shaped them, the training that forged them, and the silent terror they unleashed. Recruitment and early indoctrination. The making of a shadow, many assassins began their journey far from the glamour and grandeur of the courts they would one day infiltrate. Often plucked from the obscurity of orphanages, beggars' hovels, or disenfranchised noble families, these children were selected not for their lineage, but for their potential, keen eyes, nimble fingers, and above all, cold nerves. Groups like the Hashashin operated secretive recruitment networks, recruiting the most impressionable youth. Once chosen, these young recruits were severed from their past lives. Their identities were stripped away, replaced by a new allegiance to a cause far greater than themselves, whether religious zeal, political ambition, or sheer survival. Their early training was as much psychological as physical. They were subjected to rigorous mental conditioning, learning that their lives were expendable, their deaths holy sacrifices if it served the greater mission. For many, this was a terrifying transformation, a rebirth from boy or girl to instrument of silent death. The art of disguise. Becoming the invisible man, an assassin's power lay not only in their blade, but in their ability to vanish into the tapestry of everyday life. Disguise was an art form perfected through years of practice. They could transform from a ragged beggar to a noble page, from a humble monk to a wandering minstrel with unsettling ease. This required acute attention to detail, speech patterns, gait, even the way they held a cup or turned a key. An assassin might spend days or weeks assuming a single persona, infiltrating the target's household or city. To move undetected through the intricate social strata of medieval life demanded both intelligence and daring. Sometimes disguise was reinforced by forged documents, false letters of safe conduct or noble lineage, crafted by skilled scribes. In shadowy workshops, the ability to bluff one's way through checkpoints and inquisitive guards was often as vital as the dagger concealed beneath the cloak. Physical training, grace and death in every movement, while the assassin was not a frontline soldier. Physical prowess was essential. The ideal assassin was a master of silent movement, walking barefoot over stone floors without a sound, scaling walls under moonlight, slipping through crowded streets unnoticed. Training included stealth and silence, moving without disturbance, learning how to merge with shadows and use the environment to remain unseen. Speed and precision. Delivering a killing blow before the victim could cry out or defend themselves. The dagger was the weapon of choice, small, easy to conceal, and deadly in expert hands. Acrobatics and climbing. Many missions required scaling walls or navigating rooftops to access targets' chambers or escape unnoticed. Crossbow and throwing. Knives. Though riskier due to noise or reload time, these ranged weapons allowed assassins to strike from a distance. Physical training was relentless. A single mistake could mean capture, torture, or death. Conditioning also built endurance. Assassins often had to wait hours or even days for the perfect moment. The science and mystery of poison discussion of medieval assassination is complete without a thorough understanding of poison. The silent killer. Poisons were often concocted from natural sources, plants, minerals, and animal toxins. Learning to identify, prepare, and apply these substances required intimate knowledge of medieval herbalism, often shared secretly by apothecaries or learned monks. Common poisons included aconite, wolfsbane, deadly in minute doses, causing heart failure and paralysis. Belladonna, deadly nightshade, produced delirium and respiratory collapse. Hemlock, slow-acting but fatal, it induced paralysis. Arsenic, tasteless and odorless. It mimicked natural illness, making detection difficult. Poison was administered in various ways, mixed into food or wine by a trusted servant, or even the assassin posing as a cook. Coating blades or arrow tips, ensuring a fatal wound even if the target survived the initial strike. Applied in powder form to clothing or bedding to be absorbed through the skin. Some assassins carried antidotes or herbal remedies to protect themselves, but accidents were common. The preparation and use of poison required meticulous care and nerves of steel. Mental conditioning and psychological fortitude. Perhaps the most important training was psychological. An assassin had to overcome natural fear and moral hesitation. Detachment. Victims were often dehumanized in the mind of the killer, reduced to obstacles or enemies of the cause. Patience. Missions sometimes required stalking a target for weeks, waiting for the exact moment when guards were lax or the victim vulnerable. Acceptance of death. Many assassins embraced a fatalistic worldview, knowing capture meant torture and execution. Some, like the Hashashin, saw death as a gateway to paradise, giving them a terrifying fearlessness. Some groups used rituals or even drugs to steel the mind against doubt. The mythic accounts of Hashashin drug-induced visions likely reflect attempts to condition killers to embrace their deadly role without hesitation. Gathering intelligence. The eyes and ears in the shadows. No assassin worked blindly. Success depended on careful intelligence gathering, shadowing targets, tracking routines, noting when guards changed shifts, where the target dined, who accompanied them.